Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the mind of Charles T. Munger, the eccentric, brilliantly stubborn, and fiercely independent thinker who served as the architectural co-pilot behind the massive success of Berkshire Hathaway. We aren't just looking at a biography today. We're reverse engineering a highly optimized machine. We're going to explore exactly how a kid from Omaha built this unique system of thinking that allowed him to consistently outsmart the brightest minds on Wall Street. Now, to really grasp the sheer scale of Munger's intellect, you just have to look at how his peers view him. When titans like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett speak about someone with this level of absolute awe, you know you're dealing with an outlier. They didn't just revere his business acumen, they revered his unparalleled, almost ruthless rationality. The guy wasn't just a businessman, he was a grand master of pattern recognition.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The man behind Berkshire. 2. Multiple mental models. 3. The fat pitch strategy. 4. Honesty, family, and character. And 5. The art of aging.
Part 1. The man behind Berkshire. Before he was a billionaire, he was just Charlie from Omaha, and those Midwestern roots fundamentally shaped the blueprint of his rational mind. Growing up during the Great Depression, he actually worked in an upscale grocery store called Buffett and Son. Yep, he worked for Warren Buffett's strict grandfather, Ernest, pulling 12-hour shifts for $2 a day. Talk about instilling a ferocious work ethic, right? From there, he joined the Army Air Corps during World War II, studying hard sciences like meteorology and physics, before heading over to Harvard Law. All of this incredibly diverse, rigorous training perfectly set the stage for 1959, when he sat down for a fateful dinner back in Omaha with a young investor named Warren Buffett. They clicked instantly.
While Buffett was already a prodigy making great money, Munger brought something completely different to the table. Buffett himself actually notes that Charlie was a teacher to him. He helped Buffett transition from simply buying cheap, mediocre companies, what they called cigar-butt investing, to buying genuinely great, durable businesses at fair prices. It was this synergistic, brilliantly rational approach that fueled their epic, decades-long partnership.
Part 2. Multiple mental models.
To really understand his success, we have to look under the hood, at the engine of his mind. Munger absolutely despised the way modern education isolates subjects into these little silos. Instead, he believed you have to know the big ideas in all the big disciplines and use them routinely. So he built what he called a latticework of over 100 mental models. He's borrowing compound interest from mathematics, the idea of critical mass from physics, Darwinian synthesis from biology, and models of cognitive misjudgment from psychology. By stitching all of these together, he could view any complex problem through a multidimensional lens.
And the ultimate goal of this multidisciplinary system, it's what Munger famously coined the Lollapalooza Effect. This is his term for what happens when diverse models and forces all push in the exact same direction. It's like hitting critical mass in physics. You get a nuclear explosion of results, either incredibly good or catastrophically bad. When you analyze a situation and see 3 or 4 psychological tendencies pulling a market in the same direction, you aren't just looking at simple addition anymore. You're looking at a Lollapalooza.
Now, to achieve that level of clarity, he fiercely warns against the man with a hammer syndrome. We all know the old saying, right? To a man with only a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Well, if you only study economics, you're going to try to solve every business problem using only economics, completely ignoring the psychological or biological forces at play. Munger advocates for using your entire toolkit of 100-plus models to achieve true objective reality recognition.
Part 3. The fat pitch strategy.
So how does a mind equipped with 100 mental models actually invest? Well, Munger loves to borrow from the great algebraist Jacobi, who said, "Invert, always invert." Munger figured out really early on that it is so much easier to just avoid being stupid than it is to try to be brilliant. If you want to succeed, first figure out what guarantees failure and then simply avoid doing those things. This inversion principle eliminates huge portions of the investing chessboard right out of the gate, leaving his mind completely free to focus on the good stuff.
He actually relies heavily on the discipline of baseball legend Ted Williams, famous for his 400 single-season batting average, to explain his own strategy. Williams divided his strike zone into 77 distinct cells. He knew that if he swung at pitches in his worst cells, his average would absolutely plummet. So he just refused to swing unless the ball was in his absolute sweet spot. Munger views the stock market the exact same way. You don't have to swing at every pitch the market throws at you. You can literally just stand there, bat on your shoulder, and wait.
This creates a pretty stark contrast between standard Wall Street behavior and Munger's approach.
Wall Street is plagued by hyperactivity, frequent trading, and picking around the edges just to justify management fees. Munger playfully calls his method sit on your ass investing. He practices extreme patience, literally waiting years to make a move. But when the odds are overwhelmingly in his favor, he acts with extreme decisiveness and places massive, concentrated bets.
The execution really comes down to a rigorous checklist. First, he filters out anything too complex. If it's too tough to understand, toss it in the trash. Next, he looks for a deep moat, a durable competitive advantage protecting the business. Then, he deeply evaluates the character and competence of the management team. And finally, he waits for that fat pitch. If the price isn't right, he goes right back to sitting on his cash, perfectly content to read a book and wait.
Part 4. Honesty, Family, and Character. You see, Munger's rationality isn't just a cold, calculating tool for extracting money. It extends deeply into his values. Just consider this simple anecdote from his son. On a family ski trip in a borrowed Jeep, running late for a flight in the snow, Charlie still took a detour to fill up the gas tank, even though it was half full. He told his son that when you borrow a man's car, you always return it full. He wasn't just teaching car etiquette there. He was imparting a visceral lesson about fairness. He was teaching him not just how to make a friend, but how to keep one.
At the family dinner table, Charlie had a highly entertaining, if somewhat intense, teaching style. He would tell what his kids called the downward spiral tale. He'd basically invent these horrific apocalyptic stories of catastrophic personal and professional losses that resulted from just a single ethical compromise. It was his way of burning into his children's minds the absolute necessity of doing the right thing, especially when they made a mistake.
These core ethical rules, honesty, acknowledging mistakes, never cutting corners, they were non-negotiable. But what's really fascinating is Munger's reasoning behind them. Following the philosophy of his hero, Benjamin Franklin, Munger didn't just believe honesty was morally superior. He actually believed it was the most efficient, rational way to operate. He firmly believed that doing the right thing, acknowledging mistakes instantly, and avoiding toxic people literally makes you more money in the long run. A pristine reputation is a compounding asset.
Part 5. The Art of Aging.
So how does a mind completely obsessed with compounding knowledge approach the inevitable endgame? Well, Munger was heavily inspired by the eminent dead, particularly the ancient Roman philosopher Cicero. While modern society usually views getting old as this burdensome decline into irrelevance, Munger completely inverted that fear. Through the Ciceronian lens, aging is viewed as a glorious peak of wisdom. It's a time when you're finally free from the distracting follies and vanities of youth, allowing you to fully dedicate yourself to pure thought and service.
He completely embraced the idea of lifelong learning, deeply resonating with this quote from the ancient Athenian statesman Solon. Munger read voraciously until his final days, maintaining the core belief that if you aren't destroying at least one of your best-loved ideas every single year, you're failing. To him, the mind is a muscle that has to be continuously torn down and rebuilt with new, better models. So, as we wrap up this explainer and reflect on the immense blueprint of Charlie Munger's rational mind, I want to leave you with a question to think about. What new discipline will you learn today? You have the capacity to build your own latticework of mental models. You have the ability to invert problems, sit patiently for your fat pitch, and compound your knowledge every single day. The blueprint is right there in front of you. The only question is, what are you going to build with it?